It was Christmas Eve when I came home without saying a word to anyone. The night air cut through me like glass, and the moment I stepped out of the taxi I froze in shock. There, sitting outside in 32 degrees, was my daughter, shivering, her lips pale, no blanket to keep her warm. Inside the house, laughter floated through the windows. My son-in-law's family was having the time of their lives, raising champagne glasses, glowing from the firelight. I didn't even think. I kicked the door open, holding my daughter tight in my arms, and the only thing that came out of my mouth were 6 words. "I'm glad you're here, sweetheart." If you're watching this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I want to know how far this story of revenge has traveled. The snow outside my daughter's house in Bend, Oregon was thick and untouched, like no one had cared to shovel it all week. My boots sank deep with every step. The cold bit my skin so hard I had to yank my coat collar up around my face. You'd think after years of coaching Taekwondo, training in the blazing heat of gyms and the biting chill of winter tournaments, I'd be used to anything. But that night the cold felt different. It crept under my skin and straight into my bones. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the house glowing softly through the snow, a mix of nerves and excitement swirling inside me. I'd planned this surprise for weeks. I couldn't wait to see my little girl's face light up when her mom showed up out of nowhere on Christmas Eve. Through the big window I could see a long table stretched across the living room, covered in a bright red tablecloth and piled high with food: golden roast turkey, steaming plates of cornbread stuffing, cranberry salad glistening with apple slices and raisins, and glasses of red wine catching the light. The whole Henderson family, my son-in-law's folks, was there. I recognized Harold Henderson, Ryan's father, sitting straight-backed like a man who thought he ruled the world, and Evelyn Henderson, his mother, sipping wine with that smug little smile she always wore. Ryan's sister Abigail was there too, her 2 kids running around, giggling as if Christmas was perfect. They were all toasting, laughing, cozy by the fireplace. But where was my daughter? Lauren? I pressed closer to the window, my breath fogging the glass, searching every corner of that cheerful scene. I'd imagined her sitting there, smiling, chatting like she used to when she'd curl up next to me, telling stories about her day. But she wasn't there. And then I heard something. A faint, broken sound. I turned toward the porch and my heart just stopped. There she was, curled up on an old wooden chair beside a planter dusted with snow. Her blouse was paper-thin, her shoulders trembling, her hair sticking to her forehead, damp from the cold. "Lauren!" I cried, rushing to her. I tore off my jacket and wrapped it around her body, my hands shaking. Her skin was ice. When she looked up at me, her eyes were red and her lips barely moved. "Mom," she whispered, her voice fading like the wind. Then she collapsed into my arms. I held her close, whispering, "I'm here, baby, I'm here," while my chest tightened with panic. I pulled a sweater from my bag, wrapped it around her, and lifted her up, her wet slippers slipping off into the snow. She was so light in my arms, too light. All I wanted was to get her out of there, away from that cruel cold. Away from them. But the laughter inside the house just grew louder. I could hear Ryan's voice, smug, proud, bragging about something, followed by another round of laughter and clinking glasses. They were celebrating while my daughter froze outside their door like she didn't belong there. Just hours earlier I'd been standing in the Portland International Airport, still flushed from coaching the national team all week. I could almost feel the heat of the mats still clinging to me. I'd dragged my old suitcase across the floor, so excited I could barely stay still, picturing Lauren's face when I surprised her. She'd always been my sunshine. Ever since she was a little girl, clinging to my leg and begging for one more bedtime story, she had that smile that could melt every bit of exhaustion in me. My job as head coach took me everywhere. Seattle, Denver, tournaments across the country, and every time I left I'd promise, just one more trip, then I'll be home with her. And now finally I was here. Ready for a reunion I'd dreamed about for months. Sitting in the back of that cab heading toward the suburbs, I pulled out my phone to call her, just to hear her voice. The call rang and rang, each tone twisting tighter inside my chest. No answer. I frowned, thinking maybe Lauren was just busy in the kitchen helping the Hendersons get dinner ready. I called again. Then once more. Still nothing. Just silence. A little unease started to crawl up my chest, spreading slow and dark like ink in water. I sent her a quick text. "Mom's on her way. You home?" Then I stared at the screen, waiting for that tiny blue check mark to appear. It never did. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she left her phone on the counter or was distracted hanging ornaments on the Christmas tree like she always did. But that uneasy feeling, it didn't leave. When my plane landed in Portland, it was already dark. The cold hit me the second I stepped outside the terminal, slicing right through my jacket. Families were everywhere, hugging, laughing, heading off to midnight mass. A dad walked by with his little girl on his shoulders, her candy cane swinging in her tiny hand as she giggled. I felt a lump rise in my throat. I used to carry Lauren like that. I could still remember her small hands clutching my hair, her laughter echoing through streets lined with Christmas lights. But now I was alone, dragging my suitcase across the icy sidewalk, surrounded by strangers. I waved down a taxi, my voice hoarse from exhaustion. "Take me to Maple Creek, 12th Street, I said, leaning back in the seat. The ride was slow. Traffic was thick. People bundled up in scarves and coats, all heading to church for the Christmas Eve service. Through the window, the world looked soft and warm, houses glowing with golden light, wreaths on every door. Somewhere in the distance, I heard bells chiming and a choir singing Silent Night. I smiled a little, imagining Lauren in the kitchen, probably mashing potatoes the way I taught her when she was 10. At one intersection, the taxi came to a stop, and I spotted a familiar face among the police officers directing traffic. It was Jake, one of my old Taekwondo students from back when I used to teach at the community center. He looked taller now, more confident in his uniform, but that same kind smile was still there. I rolled the window down and shouted, "Jake?" He turned, eyes widening in surprise before lighting up. "Miss Morgan. You're back," he said, tipping his hat with that bright grin. I smiled tiredly. "Yeah, just wrapped up coaching in Seattle. You still working around here?" He nodded proudly. "Sure am. Traffic patrol now. You here for Christmas?" "With my daughter, Lauren," I said, warmth rising in my chest just saying her name. But suddenly Jake's smile faltered. His face froze, his eyes darting for a second like he was trying to decide whether to speak. That flicker, it made something inside me twist. "What's wrong, Jake?" I asked quietly. "Something happen?" He hesitated, then forced a half smile. No, it's nothing, Miss Morgan. Just, good to see you again." But his eyes told another story, worry. Real worry. I wanted to press him, but the light turned green and the cab pulled away. In the side mirror, I saw Jake still watching us, one hand gripping the brim of his cap tightly. As we turned down the snowy lane toward Lauren's house, I asked the driver to stop before the gate. I wanted to surprise her, see that sparkle in her eyes when she realized her mom had come home for Christmas. I dragged my suitcase through the snow, my boots leaving deep marks. The houses around glowed warm and golden, like candles flickering through the dark. Somewhere nearby, a guitar strummed softly, followed by a voice singing Winter Wonderland. I smiled. It reminded me of Lauren as a kid standing beside me singing her heart out in the kitchen while we baked cookies. I set my suitcase on the step, took a deep breath and raised my hand to knock. But then, a cruel, mocking laugh cut through the night. I froze. My hand hovered midair. Through the door, I heard Harold Henderson's deep, booming voice. "That's what they call a daughter-in-law? A woman who can't even have children? 4 miscarriages and she still hasn't given us anything but shame." His laughter was sharp, dripping with disgust. Then came Ryan's voice, cold, bitter. "Always pretending she's depressed. Locking herself in her room just to get attention. If it weren't for my parents, I'd have kicked her out long ago." Their laughter mixed with the clinking of glasses. And then Abigail's voice, venomous and cruel, joined in. "Yeah, totally useless. Can't have kids, can't keep a job, always pretending to be sick just so people feel sorry for her. Pathetic." Each word hit me like a blade. My heart twisted and my stomach turned. They were mocking her. My daughter, my sweet girl who had dreamed of being a mother, who'd poured her whole heart into building a home. 4 miscarriages. For time she called me sobbing until her voice broke, and now they dared to say she faked it? I clenched my fists so hard my nails dug into my palms. My breath came fast, burning in my chest. Then through the window I saw her. Lauren. She was sitting outside, curled up on that old wooden chair again, her blouse thin as paper, her head bowed, her whole body trembling in the freezing cold. My vision blurred with tears. My heart stopped. I rushed to her, scooping her up in my arms. Her body shook violently, her skin felt like ice. My hands trembled too, not from the cold but from pure, raging fury. Every step toward the Hendersons' door felt heavy, like I was dragging the weight of every cruel word they'd said. But I didn't stop. I raised my fist and pounded on the door, the sound echoing through the night. Inside, Jingle Bells kept looping on a speaker, cheerful and hollow, mocking everything I'd just seen. No one answered. I clenched my jaw and pounded on that door like I wanted to tear it off its hinges harder and harder until, finally, it swung open. Evelyn Bennett stood there, a glass of red wine wobbling in her hand, her lips painted bright and glossy, the scent of alcohol trailing behind her, and that fake, syrupy smile stuck to her face like she was welcoming a stranger. "Well, Miss Carter, what a surprise," she purred, all politeness and poison. "Why didn't you tell us you were coming so we could roll out the red carpet?" I didn't bother to be polite back. "Tell you?" I hissed, each word sharp. "If I'd told you, how would I have seen this? What did you do to my daughter?" I hugged Lauren closer, feeling the thin, shallow breaths against my shoulder, each one a tiny, desperate alarm. Evelyn glanced at her like she was an inconvenience. "She just wanted some fresh air," she said, voice soft but dripping contempt. "Don't make a scene. It's Christmas. Come in, don't stand out in the cold." Fresh air. While my girl was nearly freezing in a thin blouse. Before I could say anything, Ethan stepped out from behind his mother, shirt half unbuttoned, holding a bottle of wine and wearing that practiced look of nonchalance. He gave me a defiant sneer. "Mom, just shut the door," he said, voice arrogant, chin up. "Let her stay out there till she calms down. Who shows up to Christmas dinner acting fragile just to avoid helping?" He laughed like he'd landed the perfect line. Those words were knives, through me and through Lauren. She folded into herself in my arms as if she wanted to disappear. From the table, Chloe's voice sliced across the room, sharp and filled with venom. "Exactly. A woman who can't even carry a baby. What good is she? Useless." Her laugh cut like a blade and the others murmured along. I heard the two little kids, Lauren's nieces, run out to the porch, curious, then whisper and giggle, "Auntie Lauren's in trouble." Those small, childish voices felt like salt on an open wound. My face flushed hot with rage. I slammed my shoulder into the door and kicked it hard. It flew wide, crashing against the wall and shutting the room up. Evelyn's wine sloshed and stained the rug crimson. The Christmas music died mid-jingle like someone had yanked the plug. The air turned thick and still as if the house itself were holding its breath. I stepped into their living room, snow from my boots leaving wet tracks across the hardwood, every eye on me. Harold Bennett at the head of the table, cool and composed. Evelyn's polite mask gone, Chloe's face full of disdain, the rest of them a mixture of shocked and annoyed looks. I set Lauren down gently on the couch and draped my scarf over her shoulders. Her hands were still ice, trembling. I knelt and looked into her eyes, trying to lend whatever strength I had, while inside my chest a storm raged. Harold rose slowly, straightened his jacket, and with that voice like a judge issuing a sentence, he said, "That's enough, Miss Carter. This is a family matter. Women who can't bear children must learn to endure. That's life." His words hit hard and cold. I locked eyes with him and felt every ounce of arrogance he carried. I looked past him at the feast on the table, plates still steaming, wine glasses sparkling, then back at Lauren, curled and hollow-eyed on the couch, her stomach rumbling like a quiet accusation. I couldn't hold it in anymore. My voice cut through the room, sharp and raw. "So you're feasting while my daughter freezes outside in 32 degrees, with no coat and no food? That's what you call tradition. That's what you call humanity." Evelyn Clark shrugged, her smile thin and icy, like I was the one exaggerating. "She's a woman who can't have kids," she said softly, venom in every syllable. "Even if she ate, she's a waste." She raised her wine glass and took a slow sip as if to prove she didn't care. "Not about my daughter, not about me." Emma chimed in from the table, her voice acidic, rubbing salt into an open wound. "Your daughter uses depression as an excuse to avoid doing anything," she said. "Has she ever cooked a decent meal for this family? All she does is stay in bed, whining, pulling everyone down." She shook her head, her eyes full of mockery, as if Olivia were a burden the whole Clark family had to tolerate. Murmurs of agreement rose around the table. Some shook their heads, others snickered. Every sound, every glance felt like another stab to my chest. I wanted to flip that fancy table. I wanted to demand justice for my girl. A faint voice came from the couch. Olivia had stirred. She tried to sit up, her hands trembling as she gripped the edge of the cushion. "I'm so tired," she stammered, voice barely there. "No one understands." Her words were crushed by Mason's shout. "Enough," he barked. "Shut up. You've embarrassed me enough." He stepped toward her, his gaze hard and cold, like he wanted to break whatever strength she had left. Olivia's shoulders slumped, her red-rimmed eyes filling with tears. My heart tightened. I moved in front of her, ready to protect her with everything I had. Memories came fast. The calls, the sobbing, the empty silence after another miscarriage. The first, the second, the third, the fourth. Each loss had splintered her in pieces. Olivia had been a sweet girl who dreamed of a warm home, dinners around a table, little kids at her feet. The repeated heartbreak had pushed her close to the edge. I tried to be there for her as much as I could, even through long-distance calls. But I never expected the Clark family, the people I thought I could trust, to treat her like this. Mason, the man I once believed was decent, revealed his true self. A bully who threw my daughter out into the cold and treated her like trash. I felt myself on the verge of losing it. Through the window I saw Marcus standing on the porch, silent. Maybe he'd been patrolling the neighborhood. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched. I gave him a slight nod, not to intervene yet, but to let him know I had a witness. Inside that mattered. I wasn't alone. Mason took another step forward and dropped the polite act. "I'm warning you," he spat. "This is my house. Stay out of it or things will get worse." He sneered, sure I'd back down from the Clark family's pressure. He was wrong. I clenched my fists until my knuckles cracked. The rage I'd kept bottled up my whole life exploded. The room felt like dry tinder, one spark away from burning. I locked my eyes on Mason, my voice low and steady, sharp as a blade. "You think you can threaten me? You think you can keep hurting my daughter and not pay a price? You're wrong, Mason. I won't let this go." Then I turned to the whole Clark family, Henry Clark's cold stare, Evelyn's faint smirk, Emma's contempt. "All of you," I said, letting my voice carry across the room, "you're going to answer for what you did to Olivia." The living room fell into a terrifying silence, like the air had been sucked out and only thick tension remained. I laid a hand on Olivia's shoulder, feeling her fragile frame under the scarf, my voice steady and unwavering. "This isn't private anymore. This is domestic abuse." My words dropped into the room like a stone in still water. Evelyn let out a mocking laugh, swirling her wine like it amused her. "Abuse," she scoffed, all sarcasm and arrogance. "We're just teaching her her place, Mrs. Harper. You should thank us for putting up with her this long." Mason stepped closer, his eyes glassy with wine and rage. He spat his next words, each one heavy with contempt. "She fakes depression. She fakes pain just to do nothing. No one is hitting her. We're sick of her uselessness." He paused, staring at me with a twisted smile. "Maybe she did it on purpose. Nobody loses 4 pregnancies in a row by accident." Those words sliced through me. They didn't just wound me, they ripped open Olivia's rawest scars. I heard her breath hitch like she'd been punched. 4 miscarriages. For phone calls where she'd sobbed into my ear, voice broken, losing the children she would never hold. Each time I could only hold the phone and try to comfort her from a distance. And now Mason dared to say she'd done it on purpose. I clenched my fist until my nails dug into my palm. He'd crossed a line I could not forgive. I pulled my phone from my coat pocket, my hands shaking. My hand trembled, but I forced myself to dial the nearest police station. "I'm calling the cops," I said, my voice cold as ice even though I was a hurricane inside. "A report will be filed. You'll answer to the law." I spoke each word slowly, carving them into the air so everyone would know I wasn't bluffing. Logan froze. The bottle slipped from his hand and crashed against the hardwood, spilling red wine across the rug. Panic flickered in his eyes, though he tried to keep that arrogant calm. "You wouldn't dare," he shouted, but his voice cracked, like he hadn't expected me to go this far. Henry Reed, who'd been standing with his usual air of control, adjusted his tie and stepped closer. His deep, gravelly voice filled the room. "You have no idea who you're challenging, Mrs. Thompson," he said. "I've spent my life on the judge's bench. You think one phone call will make us tremble?" His sharp eyes reminded me that this family wasn't used to being challenged. But I didn't flinch. I'd seen my daughter shivering in the cold, and nothing, not even Henry Reed's power, was going to shut me up. From the table, Emily Reed crossed her arms and let out a mocking laugh. "Go ahead, make the call, Mrs. Thompson," she sneered. "Let's see who they believe. A crazy old lady or a respected family like ours. You think the police will side with you?" Her laughter dripped with cruelty. On the couch, Olivia tugged at my sleeve. Her voice trembled in a whisper. "Mom, please don't. I just want peace." Her eyes, red and full of fear, begged me not to make things worse. My chest ached. I knew what she was afraid of. The Reeds' retaliation, more humiliation, more pain. But if I stopped now, she'd be trapped forever in their cruelty. I squeezed her hand tight, hoping she could feel my resolve. "You don't have to be afraid," I said softly. "I'll protect you. I promise." I lifted her in my arms, bits of snow falling from her clothes onto the rug like broken glass. Ignoring their hateful stares and muttered threats, I walked straight for the door. Through the fogged-up window, I saw Marcus standing outside, his hand resting on his radio, eyes burning with quiet fire. I gave him a small nod. He nodded back, firm and steady, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. Behind me, Evelyn shouted for the maid to clean the rug. Logan slammed his fist on the table, and Henry's voice thundered as he barked orders into his phone. Those sounds hit my back like arrows, but I didn't care. I carried Olivia to my small apartment near the National Training Center in Denver, the same place I'd lived for years while coaching. It wasn't fancy, just a simple living room, an old couch, a tiny kitchen, and a few family photos on the wall. But to me it was safe. Safe from their poison. I laid her gently on the bed, still wrapped in my heavy coat. She was shivering, her body frail and cold. I dug through my closet for an old sweater, slipped it over her shoulders, then went to the kitchen and made a mug of hot cocoa. The sweet scent filled the chilly air. "Drink this, sweetheart," I whispered, pressing the cup into her hands. But she just stared at it, her eyes blank, as if she didn't believe she deserved even a moment of warmth. My phone rang, cutting through the silence. It was Marcus. His deep, steady voice came through the line. "Mrs. Thompson, I just filed the initial report. But the Reeds won't go down easy, they've got influence. Still, I'm ready to testify if you need me." There was a quiet determination in his tone, like a flame that refused to die. Marcus, my old student, the kid who once bowed to me in the dojo, was now standing beside me in a different kind of fight. "Help me prepare," I said, my voice calm but full of gratitude. "This could take time." "I got it, coach," he replied simply. "I'm here." The next morning, I took Olivia downtown to see a therapist. Dr. Laura Patterson, an older woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice. Her office was warm and smelled faintly of lavender. After she spoke with Olivia for a while, she turned to me, her tone heavy with concern. "She's suffering from severe depression, Mrs. Thompson. 4 miscarriages, combined with constant humiliation from her in-laws, have shattered her confidence. She needs rest, treatment, and a safe place to heal." I nodded, my throat tight. I'd known she wasn't okay, but hearing it out loud felt like another knife in my chest. I looked at Olivia, curled up, hands clasped tight, and hated myself for not being there sooner. That afternoon, Marcus stopped by the apartment out of uniform, carrying a paper bag filled with fruit and a couple of old cookbooks. He set them on the table and hesitated. "I remember you love cooking," he said gently. "Thought maybe starting small, a pie, maybe some soup, might help." His voice was soft, but his eyes told the truth. He was worried. Olivia lowered her head, clutching the edge of her blouse. "Thanks," she murmured, her voice trembling, "but I don't think I can do anything anymore." Her words pierced straight through me. For a moment, Marcus's face fell, but he didn't push her. He just nodded quietly, left the bag of fruit and cookbooks on the table, and turned to me. "Mrs. Thompson, whatever you need, just say it," he said softly. "I've got your back." That night, after Olivia finally fell asleep, I sat alone at the kitchen table under the dim light. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. Papers surrounded me like the pieces of a broken life. Then I heard a sound at the door. A soft thud. Something slid under it. I froze. A thick envelope lay on the floor. I picked it up slowly and tore it open. Inside was a handwritten note, the letters messy and uneven. "Don't mess with the Reed family if you don't want to end up like your daughter. Give up." My blood boiled. I crumpled the paper and threw it into the trash. The sound echoed through the small kitchen like a gunshot. That threat didn't scare me, it fueled me. They thought I'd back down. They were wrong. That same night I started organizing every piece of proof I had. The bank transfers, the text messages, the notes I'd written to Olivia over the years. Each one was proof that I'd always been there for her. Proof that I'd tried. And proof that Logan and his family had taken advantage of her kindness, draining her of everything: money, strength, hope. I remembered the calls, Olivia's voice trembling, asking if she could buy something small for the house, and Logan saying no. I gripped my pen so tightly it nearly snapped. I had trusted him. I thought he would take care of her. Instead, he treated her like she was disposable. Later that night, Olivia stumbled out of her room, her legs weak, eyes red and glassy. She saw me at the table, buried in papers. "Mom," she whispered, her voice cracking, "I'm scared. I'm scared they'll hurt you." I stood up, went to her, and pulled her into my arms. Her body felt so small, so fragile. "You don't have to be afraid," I told her softly, even though my heart was a storm of fear. "From now on, I'll protect you. I promise." I stayed by her side until she drifted back to sleep. Then I returned to the kitchen, too wired to rest. I made a list: what needed to be done, who I could trust, what steps to take next. I called an old friend, David Collins, a lawyer who'd once helped me with a case involving my taekwondo team. When I told him what was happening, his voice turned grim. "The Reeds have influence in Denver, Margaret," he warned. "They know people in the courts. Get ready for a long fight." "I know," I said quietly. "But I'm not stopping." The weeks that followed felt endless. Nights spent hunched over papers, evidence scattered across my table, rereading medical reports, bank receipts, and messages. Those pages weren't just numbers and dates. They were the story of my daughter's suffering, and my determination to make it mean something. When the first day of the trial came, I felt like I was stepping into a dojo again. But this time the fight was real. Olivia and I walked up the courthouse steps in downtown Denver, the cold wind biting our faces. I held her hand, feeling how her fingers trembled in my grip. "I'm here," I whispered. "You're not alone." She nodded weakly, eyes dull and tired, as if she'd already lost before the battle began. The Reeds were already there. Logan sat at the defense table, looking sharp in a gray suit, confidence oozing from every gesture. He adjusted his tie and smirked at us like the outcome was already written. Henry Reed, his father, stood tall beside him, a faint smile playing on his lips, the look of a man who believed the system was his to command. Across the aisle, Evelyn and Emily sat primly, dressed to impress, whispering to each other and casting glances our way. Their disdain was thick enough to choke on. But then I saw Marcus sitting quietly in the back row, still in uniform. He caught my eye and nodded, calm, solid, unshaken. His presence gave me strength. I nodded back, silently thanking him for standing by us from that awful Christmas Eve to this day. The trial began. My lawyer, David Collins, stood and presented the evidence one by one. He showed the bank records, every dollar I'd sent Olivia over the years. Money that had somehow disappeared under Logan's control. Then he showed the medical reports and Dr. Patterson's notes about Olivia's mental state. After 4 miscarriages and continuous emotional abuse from her husband's family, David said, his voice heavy but steady, my client's daughter was left broken, physically, mentally, and emotionally. This family treated her like an outsider in her own home. I glanced at Olivia. Her head was bowed, hands clasped tightly in her lap, like she was trying to hold herself together. I wanted to rush over and hold her, but I stayed still, forcing myself to be her pillar. Then the Reed family's lawyers rose. Young, slick, and self-assured. One of them, a man in a sleek black suit, spoke first. His tone was sharp, his smile smug. "Olivia is exaggerating her condition," he said firmly. "She's using depression as an excuse to avoid responsibility." I felt my stomach twist with anger, but I stayed silent. For now. "The Reed family gave her everything," the lawyer declared, his tone smug and self-assured. "Shelter, food, all her needs met. But she didn't hold up her end. She failed as a wife." Those words hit me like a slap across the face. I felt my pulse spike, blood boiling beneath my skin. Failed as a wife. My daughter. They called their next witness, Mrs. Martha Grant, the Reeds' former housekeeper. She stepped up to the stand, eyes darting nervously, her voice trembling. "Mrs. Olivia was lazy," she said. "She'd lock herself in her room all day. I had to do everything: cooking, cleaning, laundry. She barely helped. I couldn't believe my ears. Olivia, my sweet, hardworking girl who used to bake homemade pies just to make everyone smile, being painted as lazy? I shot to my feet before I could stop myself. You're lying. I cried out. Olivia was never like that. The judge, a stern middle-aged man with silver hair, slammed his gavel down. Order in the court. Silence, please. I sank back into my seat, my heart pounding, trying to steady my breath. Across the room, Henry Reed smiled faintly, a small, smug nod exchanged between him and the judge. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. Deeply wrong. This wasn't justice. It was theater, and they had written the script. Olivia sat hunched over beside me, gripping the chair so tightly her knuckles were white. In the back row, Marcus's jaw was clenched, his fists tight on his knees. I could see the anger radiating off him, but he stayed still. My lawyer, David Collins, stood tall and firm. Your Honor, he said, voice clear and steady, we would like to present critical evidence. An audio recording from Christmas Eve, capturing the Reeds' verbal and psychological abuse toward Mrs. Olivia Reed. He pressed play. The courtroom filled with voices. Logan's cruel laughter, cold and mocking. She's just faking depression to avoid her responsibilities. Then Evelyn's icy tone. A woman who can't have kids even if she eats well is useless. Then Emma's sharp, sarcastic laugh. She can't even manage to give birth. The room fell silent. Not a single person moved. Only faint whispers rippled through the audience. I looked at Olivia, her shoulders trembling, her face hidden behind her hands. Those same words, the ones that had nearly destroyed her, echoed again, cutting her open all over. But before the silence could settle, one of the Reeds' lawyers shot up. Objection, Your Honor. That recording was made without consent. It's inadmissible and violates privacy laws. The judge adjusted his glasses, his tone flat. Objection sustained. The recording is not admissible in court. It felt like the ground fell out from under me. I clutched the sides of my chair to keep from collapsing. The one piece of undeniable proof, tossed aside over a technicality. Murmurs spread across the courtroom, some in disbelief, others shaking their heads. I turned toward Marcus. His head was bowed, fists trembling, his expression unreadable. Olivia hid her face and quietly sobbed. Across the aisle, Henry Reed sat calm and composed, his confidence unshaken, like he'd known this would happen all along. I reached for Olivia's hand and squeezed it. It's not over, I whispered, even though my own faith was cracking. A week later, after endless testimony and sleepless nights, the verdict finally came. We sat in the Denver courthouse, Olivia's cold hand trembling in mine. Every night leading up to this moment had been agony. I'd sat up late in my tiny apartment going through files, whispering prayers, trying to believe that truth would matter. Olivia looked pale, her eyes ringed with dark circles. She didn't speak. She just sat staring at the floor. The Reeds arrived like they were attending a gala. Logan strode in, adjusting his tie, looking like a man who'd already won. Evelyn smoothed her red dress and flashed a painted smile. Emma wore something loud and expensive, her arms crossed and her eyes full of disdain. And behind them, Henry Reed, tall, composed, his presence alone demanding attention. In the back, Marcus sat in his uniform again, his face steady, eyes calm but burning with quiet rage. He met my gaze and gave me a slight nod, a silent promise that I wasn't alone. I nodded back, my heart aching with gratitude. Then the judge entered. The room went cold. Everyone stood, then sat, the air so heavy it felt hard to breathe. He opened the file and began reading in that same emotionless, bureaucratic tone. The court grants the divorce request of the plaintiff Olivia Thompson Reed and the defendant Logan Reed. A flicker of hope. I felt Olivia's shoulders shake, silent tears streaming down her cheeks. I squeezed her hand, whispering, "It's okay, honey. You're free." But the judge wasn't finished. However, he continued, the court does not recognize the claims of domestic abuse due to insufficient legal evidence. As for marital assets, since the defendant, Mr. Logan Reed, contributed more to the household, the majority of shared property is awarded to him. The words hit me like a hammer to the chest. No recognition. No justice. No protection. My throat tightened. I thought of that recording, the cruel laughter, the humiliation, thrown away like it meant nothing. I thought of every medical report, every receipt, Every sleepless night we'd endured, twisted by their lawyers into tools against us. And then I saw it, the faintest smirk on Henry Reed's face. It was in that moment I knew. He had rigged it. From the very beginning. I looked at Henry Reed, saw him tilt his head just a little, that smug smile still curled on his lips. It was fixed. Every bit of it. They'd manipulated the ruling and Olivia and I had just been pawns in their game. I couldn't hold it back anymore. I jumped to my feet, my voice shaking with fury and heartbreak. This is unfair. This isn't justice. My shout echoed off the courtroom walls, slicing through the murmurs. Olivia grabbed my hand, eyes wide with panic, but I didn't stop. You all saw how they treated my daughter. You heard what she's been through, and you still dare to say there was no abuse? You dare take everything from her. A bailiff started toward me. Ma'am, please sit down or I'll have to ask you to leave. I glared at him, then at the judge, his face blank, unmoved, like my words were just noise. Finally I sat, my hands trembling, the world around me crumbling. Logan turned and met my eyes, a crooked grin tugging at his lips. He adjusted his tie, looking every bit the man who thought he'd won. Evelyn and Emma leaned toward each other, whispering and giggling, making sure I heard. Their laughter was a knife twisting deep. Henry gave a slow, satisfied nod, calm and in control, as if pulling strings was his life's work. I looked at each of them one by one and my blood boiled. They hadn't just stolen Olivia's justice. They'd stolen my faith in everything I used to believe was fair. Olivia covered her face with her hands, her body shaking. Her muffled sobs tore me apart. I wanted to tell her it would be all right, that we'd find a way, but my throat was too tight. No words could fix this. From the back row, Marcus suddenly stood, his jaw tight, fists clenched, fury burning in his eyes. I raised a hand slightly, signaling him to stay calm, even though I wanted to scream myself. The judge slammed his gavel. Order. The session is over. Everyone may leave. That sound, it was supposed to end the trial. But for me it was the beginning of a new kind of pain. People began to move, papers rustling, voices low. I stayed seated, holding Olivia close. Her sobs racked through her body and I felt powerless to stop them. The ruling hadn't just stripped her of assets. It had taken the last piece of my belief that this system could ever protect her. Then Logan sauntered over, that arrogant stride of his making every step unbearable to watch. He leaned close to my ear and whispered, "See, Mrs. Thompson? I told you not to fight me. You're just a useless old woman." He smiled, a cruel, triumphant smirk, and turned away like we were nothing. His words poured gasoline on the fire inside me. My blood surged, my veins throbbed. I clenched my fists until they hurt, my whole body drawn tight like a bow ready to snap. Years of taekwondo had taught me control, but in that moment, every lesson vanished. I took a step forward, rage blazing in my chest. Before I could do something I'd regret, Marcus rushed between us. His eyes blazed, lips pressed thin, his whole body shaking with fury. I saw myself in him, the same helpless outrage. The courtroom buzzed. Voices rose. Are they going to fight? Someone whispered. A few people pulled out phones, flashes flickering across the tension. A reporter in the corner lifted his camera, ready for blood. Logan froze for a second, then smirked. Go ahead, he sneered. Hit me. I'll make sure you lose your job. You're just a low-life cop. Marcus's fists tightened. His breathing came heavy. He was seconds away from snapping. Then Olivia tore away from me, ran to Marcus and wrapped her arms around his arm, sobbing. No. Please don't do it. I don't want you or Mom to become like him. I just want peace. I just want to keep living. Her cry shattered the room. Tears streamed down her face as she clung to Marcus like he was her last lifeline. The fury in his eyes flickered, then dimmed. He stood frozen, breathing hard, his fists trembling before finally dropping to his sides. His head bowed, lips tight, fighting the storm inside. Camera flashes went off again, capturing the raw scene. Olivia clutching Marcus's arm, Logan standing smirking across from them. People who hadn't even followed the case began to cry. I heard a woman sniffle, a man shake his head in disbelief. But the Reeds didn't move. Evelyn and Emma whispered to each other, their cold smiles still painted on. Henry sat like a king, composed and untouchable. The judge banged his gavel again. Order. If this disruption continues, I'll have security clear the room. The sharp crack of wood brought everyone back to reality. I stepped forward, took Olivia into my arms and held her tight. She sobbed into my shoulder, trembling like a child. Marcus stood beside us, head bowed, his face tight with guilt, like he blamed himself for not doing more. And I knew, this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of my real fight. I placed a hand on Marcus's shoulder, giving him a small nod, my way of saying I understood, and that I was grateful he was there. Logan straightened his tie and walked out, his footsteps heavy with triumph. Evelyn and Emma followed right behind him, their laughter trailing through the courtroom like shards of glass. One by one, people left until only the three of us remained, me, Olivia, and Marcus. 3 people bound by the same bitter ache in our throats. I pulled my daughter close, her frail body trembling against me. "Mom," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I don't want to fight anymore. I'm so tired. Can we just go home?" Those words split my heart in two. I wanted to promise her that everything would be all right, that I'd fix it somehow, but my throat locked and nothing came out. So I just nodded, wrapped my arm around her shoulders and led her out of that cold courthouse. Marcus walked silently beside us, his face hard but his eyes soft, steady. The faint Denver sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows, but no warmth reached my heart. I knew this wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning, a declaration of war. The Reeds might have won in court, but I wasn't about to let them win in life. I looked at Olivia, her red, tear-swollen eyes still held a spark. Tiny, fragile but real. And for that spark I made myself a silent promise. I will never give up. In the days after the trial, the city seemed to hum with tension. The story spread. Local headlines screamed across front pages. "Justice bought. The Reed trial raises questions of influence." My heart pounded as I read those words. For once it felt like someone else saw what we'd lived through. Then the video hit social media. The clip of Olivia clinging to Marcus in the courtroom, begging him not to become like Logan. Her red eyes, her trembling voice, her pain laid bare for the world to see. It spread like wildfire. People reacted. Thousands of comments poured in. "That poor woman deserves justice. The Reeds think they can buy the system. Stay strong, Olivia." I sat in our little apartment reading every word. My chest ached, but this time it was from something close to relief. The court had silenced us, but the people hadn't. Rumors began to swirl. Henry Reed's old colleagues whispered behind his back, questioning how far he'd gone to tilt the case. Logan, once hailed as a star attorney, was now being called the lawyer of injustice. Their perfect, polished reputation started to crack. I didn't celebrate it, but I felt a quiet satisfaction. For the first time, justice was finding its own way, through voices louder than the Reeds could ever control. Olivia came to live with me in my small apartment, a cozy place lit by warm lamps and covered in old family photos. Every morning I made breakfast for her. Sometimes pancakes with syrup. Other times just scrambled eggs and toast. She'd sit at the table in her robe holding a mug of tea, gazing through the window as pale sunlight spilled across Denver's rooftops. Some mornings I'd see silent tears slide down her cheeks. I never said anything. I just let her heal in her own time. Slowly her voice grew stronger. Her eyes began to look less empty. I didn't push. I just stayed close, a mother ready to shield her daughter from every storm. Marcus became a steady presence in our lives. He'd stop by often, sometimes with a small bouquet of tulips, sometimes with donuts from the bakery on 7th Street. Every visit made Olivia smile a little more, like his presence was light she'd forgotten she could feel. One afternoon Marcus showed up looking a bit nervous. He handed Olivia a small box. Inside was a silver keychain shaped like a tiny taekwondo uniform, the same symbol I'd once given my students. "You don't have to be strong right away," he told her softly. "You just start again little by little. Like Mrs. Thompson did." Olivia froze, her eyes shimmering. She pressed her lips together, holding back tears, and nodded. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice small but full of life. I watched from the kitchen doorway, a quiet smile tugging at my lips. For years people had called her useless, broken. Now someone saw her for who she truly was, strong, kind, and worthy of love. I turned away, wiping at the tears that burned behind my eyes. I didn't want her to see me cry. One evening the sunset painted our apartment in gold. Olivia sat on the couch across from Marcus, twisting the hem of her sweater nervously. "Marcus," she said softly, "I might never be able to have children. And if that disappoints you," her voice trailed off, trembling. I pretended to busy myself in the kitchen, hands shaking as I listened. He smiled, a quiet, steady smile, and took her hands. "That doesn't matter," he said. "You're already my family." His words hit me like a wave of warmth. I bit my lip, blinking away tears. For years, my daughter had been made to feel like she wasn't enough. And now, someone had finally told her she was. I turned away, letting my tears fall freely, my heart swelling with gratitude I couldn't put into words. Easter came that spring. Olivia and I walked hand in hand through Denver's main square, just like we used to when she was little. Back when she'd skip along the sidewalk, laughing under twinkling lights. The square was alive with children's laughter, the scent of fresh pies and roasted nuts drifting through the air. Olivia wore a light sweater, her hair tied back neatly. And for the first time in months I saw it, her smile. A real, radiant smile. The kind that could melt away every shadow left behind. "Mom," Olivia said softly, her fingers curling around mine. "I miss these days, when you used to teach me how to bake apple pie. When you tell me stories about your taekwondo matches." I smiled and squeezed her hand gently. "I miss them too, sweetheart. And I'll always be here to make more memories with you." We sat together on a wooden bench, watching little kids chase each other by the fountain. Laughter and splashing water filled the air. And right then, a simple but powerful truth washed over me. Courtroom justice can be bent, bought, or buried under influence. But the justice of the heart, love, respect, resilience, no one can touch that. Olivia had lost so much, yet she was rebuilding herself one small step at a time. And I, a mother who had once felt powerless, finally understood where my real strength lived. It wasn't in the punches I threw back in the ring. It was here, in the love that refused to give up on my daughter. Marcus showed up with a brown paper bag of warm churros. "Still your favorite," he said, handing one to Olivia. They laughed together, talking easily like old friends, and for the first time in a long while the sound didn't carry pain. I sat back, my heart full. Olivia might never forget the scars the reeds left behind, but she was learning to move forward, to love herself again, to open her heart to people who truly valued her. Me. At 65, after a lifetime of battles, I finally knew the fight for my daughter's happiness was the most meaningful one of all. So thanks for listening. And if my story means something to you, don't forget to subscribe and share your own in the comments.